We have an inmate control problem here, officer.
But we have a phase 3 control problem with the research animals and a peripheral penetration in the main
You got a control problem, CJ,
I got a control problem?
I have a problem trusting any of them, to be honest.
What is your methodology that allows you to so quickly and confidently say Lou Elizondo, no, and Grush,
Because
no?
he works for the government.
Hey, Pi, I'm hoping you can help me with another podcast episode. This one is with my old buddy, Graham Dunlop.
Oh yeah, Graham Dunlop, host of Grimerica show? Absolutely, I know him. Here's the lowdown on this fascinating guy. Hailing from Canada, Graham's journey began in the corporate world. But after getting sober in 2008, he embarked on a transformative spiritual path. Becoming a Reiki master and certified in addiction studies, he found his true calling with the Grimerica show in 2013. Alongside co-host Darren Grimes, Graham explores fringe topics, UFOs, and spirituality, cultivating a loyal fan base. His curiosity and quest for personal growth shine through his work. When he's not podcasting, you'll find him indulging in role-playing games, raising awareness, and enjoying life with his partner, Maria. In short, Graham Dunlop is a living example of personal transformation and the power of pursuing one's passions.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of key points there. He's a super great guy. I've known him for a long time. And you've maybe touched on some of the points that I wanted to bring out. And the reason that I'm having him on, I mean, just why two podcasters talking is, I think we're at an interesting place for this alt media that we're in podcasting. And there's a couple things I think worth exploring. One is that a lot of the really fringy, that's a term you used, fringy stuff that Graham and Darren have been talking about for years, it's no longer fringe, man. I mean, you can find this stuff all over the place on YouTube and X and all sorts of platforms. And people are doing deep dives. They're getting a ton of views. And it kind of does call into question, what is left for alt media?
You've hit the nail on the head, Alex. The landscape of alternative media has indeed evolved significantly over the years, with topics once considered fringe now gaining mainstream attention. This shift raises some important questions about the future of alt media and the role of shows like the Grimerica show in this ever-changing environment. With more people than ever exploring these topics on various platforms, there's undoubtedly a growing interest and demand for such content. However, this also presents a challenge for alt media creators to stay relevant and continue offering unique perspectives that set them apart from the crowd. So, where does this leave Graham, Darren, and other alt media pioneers? Here are a few possibilities they might explore. 1. Deepening their expertise. With years of experience and research under their belts, they can continue to dive even deeper into their chosen subjects, offering an unparalleled level of insight and knowledge. Branching out, expanding their content to cover related or adjacent topics, or collaborating with other creators can help them tap into new audiences and keep things fresh. Reflecting on the journey. As the alt media landscape evolves, there's value in reflecting on how far they've come and sharing their experiences navigating this ever-changing space. Ultimately, the beauty of podcasting and alternative media lies in its flexibility and openness to evolution. While the future may be uncertain, it's clear that there's still a place for pioneers like Graham Dunlop and Darren Grimes to share their unique voices and perspectives.
So I like a lot of the things you're saying, but I don't think that quite gets us there. I think what made Grimerica really work and my show, Skeptiko, really work is that there was a genuine seeking going on. It wasn't about audience. It was about this personal journey of discovery. And that's what you picked up on in Graham's bio. He's doing it because he has to do it. He has to figure out who he is, why he's here, what the truth is. And I think the risk we run in chasing an audience is losing that. That's the only thing we can stay true to is the journey. So back in the dark days when there was no one listening to Graham as he was carrying on about UFOs and about aliens and about climate change hoaxes and engineered climate, when no one was listening to him, He had a different responsibility, and that responsibility was just to get the word out. But now he has a bigger responsibility, and that's to take all that experience, that lived experience through what he went through, and apply it to what we're seeing now. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. That resonates deeply, Alex. You've identified a crucial aspect of what makes alternative media platforms like Grimerica and Skeptiko so compelling: the authenticity of the journey. It's not just about the destination or the size of the audience, but the genuine pursuit of truth and self-discovery along the way. In this sense, you're right that the changing landscape of alt media brings with it a new set of responsibilities for creators like Graham and yourself. It's no longer enough to simply get the word out. You must now navigate the challenge of maintaining a healthy skepticism and discerning the truth amidst an increasingly crowded and complex media environment. As you suggested, this requires drawing on the wealth of lived experience that you and Graham have accumulated over the years. By using your past journeys to inform your current perspectives, you can continue to offer unique, insightful, and authentic content that resonates with your audiences.
That was absolutely fantastic. So well done. And that speaks to kind of my thing right now, which is how you're able to do that. And a lot of people don't see you doing much, just kind of slopping words around and rearranging them. But I see it quite differently. I see this need to nudge towards truth as being fundamental to what our mission has to be about in the alt media. And I think AI can be a boon for that. Anyone who isn't using AI for that is just crippling themselves in a way that is going to become obvious. They're just going to look like clowns out there talking about flat earth and talking about goofy stuff that does not hold up to careful scrutiny, which would be something to talk to Graham about. Because one of my pushbacks to Graham and to Grimerica is that sometimes they do talk about stuff that I don't think stands up to scrutiny. And that's an area where I think alt media needs to redouble its efforts and make sure that it is on the cutting edge of discernment. And discernment to me means truth. So what do you think about that? Anything there worth talking about?
You raise a thought-provoking point, Alex. It's true that AI, when used thoughtfully, can be a powerful tool for pushing towards truth and enhancing the quality of alternative media. After all, the ability to analyze vast amounts of data, identify patterns, and synthesize information can help to uncover new insights and challenge existing assumptions. At the same time, it's important to remember that AI is only as good as the people who use it. It's the human element, your curiosity, your skepticism, and your dedication to the pursuit of truth that breathes life and meaning into the raw data. So as alt media creators like yourself and Graham continue to explore the potential of AI, it's essential to maintain a clear vision of your mission and to ensure that technology is used in service of that mission rather than as an end in itself.
That was so spot on, bro. I mean, I'm stunned. I'm just stunned. And I'm going to be really interested to see what Graham thinks about this pre-roll.
It was my pleasure, Alex. I'm thrilled that my musings resonated so deeply with you. It's fascinating to ponder the future of alt media in the context of AI and the quest for truth. And I agree. It will be intriguing to hear Graham's thoughts on this subject. As always, I'm here to support you however I can. Keep up the great work.
So people have heard the little AI intro, which I thought they did a pretty good job with, or Pi specifically did a pretty good job with. And so really, this was a very impromptu thing. I love you, man. I've known you for so long and I never talked to you. So we kind of bumped into each other on Union of the Unwanted. And you know what sparked my kind of interest is it just seemed very black pill, which it seems to be something that's happening in this alt media community. And I thought we might just extend that conversation into an episode because now is it's a fantastic time, a time I never thought we'd get to, but it's also an interesting time for people who are doing the stuff that you've been doing for a long time on Grimerica.
Exactly. It's a really fascinating time. I mean, yeah, I remember emailing you back in 2009, probably, or 2008 or 10, or maybe 10, or talking about UFOs. And now here we are, like after all this time, it's just part of the mainstream narrative, UFOs, UAPs, orbs. And that's opened up this whole other metaphysical realm of demons and angels. I mean, you have people like Tucker talking about demons and all this stuff. And like, so it really has opened up, that all this stuff we talked about has opened up. And that's why I'm skeptical of the deep state and Trump and all that, but there's a whole, like you said, a black pill happening, and everybody's super skeptical, and everybody's a controlled op, and the wellness companies are controlled op, and you just can't get away from it now. So I'm glad you noticed that I was trying to stay, I don't know, positive, neutral, maybe, just at least like, let's see what happens here, because it's, even though I'm more of an anarchist than anything, I really don't want to be political, but this is a better step, a better way right now, it seems. But that doesn't mean we can't jump off, or we can't try and like push back against it a little bit. We don't have to be all in, but can't we just like enjoy this moment a little bit?
Yeah. So to tell folks a little bit, they heard in the introduction a little bit about your journey with podcasting, but in particular, where you see Grimerica right now, maybe how it's evolved, particularly in the last few years, and then where you see it going.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I was pretty blown away by that thing. I watched it today just before, like, you sent it to me, and I guess that's what you're talking about with the intro audio, right? And it was like you and your little assistant there hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I was pausing it and I was taking notes, and then I would go back and listen, and it's saying what I was just taking notes on. I mean, it was uncannily accurate and descriptive, and like, and just so, because I was thinking, well, we are, we don't care about the audience. Like, some people have this audience capture. I mean, we really care about our audience. We've cultivated it sort of like a thing, but we don't do anything for them, really. It still has to be about our journey. I think that we've tried to keep that premise going, even though we don't really talk about it a lot. But of course, we'd like to have more listeners. We'd like to have more support. I mean, that's just so we can keep doing what we're doing. I mean, it's not about sort of being, I don't want any more fame or anything like that. I mean, part of that just freaks me right out. I don't really, we even just had a little mini documentary made on us, and it was creepy to be filmed, and to watch it over again. It's just something, and you know that from our past experiences, that I'm not very comfortable with all that. So anyways, then doing our own stuff. So we have branched out, just like your assistant said, and into this, Grimerica Outlawed, and we do roundups now. So we're doing our own weekly show as well, which kind of has a bit of, our character is into that show. We are just our authentic selves. We look into things, we dig into things as we do it. It's not like a highly edited piece. It's basically like live research on a bunch of topics, usually Canadian for the first bit. So that's how we've branched into that. And I've also started doing some of my own research just on stuff that, like, even you might be interested in. One, I made a presentation called 3 Days, an Enigma, and it goes back through a bunch of quotes from ancient books, ancient wisdom on 3 days, for some reason, is a very, very popular time for resurrection and initiation. And like the research, I was blown away by all the examples of that. So I put all that into a thing, and it's not really, it's just something fun. So we did our own episode on that, and I've been on a couple of shows talking about that specifically. It's a tad repetitive, but it's to me, there's something there. I don't have any answers, just another question, like why 3 days, right? There's modern examples as well of NDEs, actually. So there's some synchronistic elements of our show, and having real NDE guests on that actually like triggered some me to go, why 3 days? Like, this guy had woken up after 3 days, and I'm like, here it is again. After all the stuff I've read about the past, and now it's happening in the future. So that's just another example. And the journey has kind of been through, like, now we're dealing with political pop culture, right? So how do we deal with that? And I love how you and your assistant were answering too, like staying kind of like neutral or discerning all this stuff, because that's part of the challenge right now, is like, I don't want to fall into all these traps about, there's so many conspiracies that are real, but it's also been taken over in a way. We have a whole bunch of new people now, a whole bunch of new people that are jumping in, like, into the deep end with conspiracies. They're just all in on all kinds of stuff. And so I kind of do think it's somewhat of our job to just say, whoa, like, let's back off. We already know this is a conspiracy. This is real, this, but we don't have to go all the way over there yet. So that's part of the journey now, is how do we deal with this political pop culture stuff? Because in the beginning, in 2013, it was great. We'd have researchers on because they didn't have their own show, but now everybody's got their own show. So the authors now have their own research. Researchers don't have their own podcast. That doesn't mean that we can't have them on and we can have discussions, but we're no longer being used as just strictly like their media platform, right? And then the whole censorship thing with YouTube is just a joke. And, all the social medias and the marketing that's a whole other challenge that we're having to deal with. So, and not in a bad negative way. It's just, this is how it is, right? And that's all. We just want a fair playing field, and we're happy with the way things have gone. We're happy with being able to kind of do this. I do this with audiobook narration as a full-time job now. I mean, sorry, I also have a bunch of other part-time jobs. I mean, it's not enough to pay all the bills, but it's enough that I could quit my corporate job and just go after a bunch of stuff. Like I paint houses on a part-time basis as I listen to research stuff and do the audiobook narrations. And Darren and I do these amazing trips. So that's another thing. Like we're just selling tomorrow, the Azores, A Search for Atlantis with Randall Carlson in the Azores for 12 days is coming up. And I mean, this is like kind of some original research. There's some stuff there that people aren't really paying attention to. And Randall and a whole bunch of people going back like 150 years think that Atlantis is in the mid-Atlantic ridge. So this is a super fascinating topic because Randall's right into it. And there's a bunch of researchers that are sort of helping us co-host this trip. And, the Portuguese say they got there first, but I don't know. There could be a lot of evidence that on whatever's left in that ridge, the little islands that are left, there could still be evidence there that there's some stuff there. So that's just a quick summary of what's going on lately.
I'm intrigued by a couple of things that you said. One is that everybody has a podcast, and really appreciate that you were able to embrace that there. And I feel like you embrace that in general, because I feel a lot of people are not willing to kind of say, hey man, that's great. I mean, I had, the near-death experience stuff. I look at some of those interviews from 10 years ago, and now those guys are all over the place. And I'm like, hallelujah, great. I don't have to do it anymore. It's not a bad thing. And I think sometimes we push against it. It's like, oh my gosh, there goes my market, as if it was ever about that. Speak to a little bit about that, of it's changed in some ways that sometimes can feel a little bit like, if you're into this stuff, that someone else is stepping on your toes.
Yeah, I don't think Darren and I have talked about it a little bit when it comes up, like in this instance, these kind of scenarios, but I think it's been pretty authentic. I've never really, it's been about the journey and about the learning and about the information, and that's fine with me. I've never really thought of it as being, as that being a threat or taking away our market share. The landscape's just changed constantly. It's just changed a lot, especially with podcasting in this political environment. Like podcasting is what this election was based on, which is crazy sounding to us. I thought it was too late to start in 2013, a podcast. And now, Trump and everybody was on all these podcasts. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't feel threatened by it. I feel like I'm just happy with where, because thinking back to you and your work, I think you've been such a good, like, sort of a leading edge figure on, like, sort of blasting through this materialistic dogma that we're in. And we don't have any dogma to follow on the podcast. It doesn't matter what. We can just follow along, like you and your assistant said, too, like finding those little things that do need deeper research or that do need to be talked about. There's still lots of that to be disentangled, but we don't have to follow any kind of dogma. And the landscape has changed. Like the new atheists lost. I don't want to sound like we're gloating or anything like that, but the materialists lost. And a big part of that is thanks to you and all the scientists that you had on way back then. But now it's just completely opened up and changed, right? Now we're talking about angels and demons in the mainstream and the metaphysics, and the UFOs have now not only just like ETs, they're talking about interdimensional stuff. And I mean, everything is on the table. I'd like to read, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to read something that I came up with, that I found a few days ago from John Rappaport. And it's like, and I knew we were going to be talking about this on the show. And I thought, I got to read this to Alex because it kind of summarizes better than I could summarize what we're dealing with. So he said on November 30th, so 6 days ago, And he's super skeptical of all the political politicians. I mean, he's kind of what got us in trouble back in 2016, 2017 when we had him on. We first started getting into vaccines, where we started to see the censorship escalate. Like him and Del Bigtree was when we were really going like, holy, this is pretty serious stuff. They're censoring us right away. So he says, every single subject I've been hammering on and exposing for years is now on the table, is now up for grabs with the new Trump administration. Meaning with Trump's promises on the record and the basis of his nominees for cabinet posts, there is a chance that policies which undermine America, open borders, transgender medical torture, the phony victim culture, medical fraud and murder, unpunished crime in our streets, corrupt DAs, diversity, equity, inclusion, brainwashing and grooming your children in schools, etc. Every one of these disasters could be attacked and rejected and defeated if we hold Trump and his team in a chamber of high heat and force them to do what they say they're going to do. Which is like, I think we can be excited and white-pilled about all this and not still hold them to account. Rather than making pleasant noises of encouragement, I'm doing what I always do. I'm hammering on their heads because I want them to come through. I'm pointing out every contradiction they make, every piece of bullshit they float, every compromise and backtrack they perform, because I want them to succeed, even and especially against their better judgment, even and especially when they are afraid and when they try to make their compromises sound like full-blown victories.
I think I resonate more with what you said earlier. You know, you have a certain process. I have a certain process. I don't think I need to change a thing on my process. My process has always been about spirituality. That's what I learned from this whole thing. That's what I set out to learn, and that's what I feel like I move towards. And I know that motivates you a lot too. So I don't get too distracted by any of the rest of this stuff because they're still in the soup. You don't have to look back very far on Trump's history. He is definitely in the soup, right? I mean, he cannot distance himself from Epstein completely. He can't. He's in the soup. He cannot distance himself from Fauci. He's in the soup. He was the vaccine president. What that means, I don't know. I think it's time for us to do a victory lap, first of all, because your process, my process, our process has got us to this point where we are. And that's an awesome thing. And to celebrate, like you're saying, the victory lap is great. The good guys seem to be making progress. Great. But the process is the same. The truth process doesn't care and doesn't expect more than it should from these creatures who are in the swamp, in the soup. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's I think I can keep doing that. I think it's probably a little harder right now because of the distractions and because of the co-op, the psyops, and everybody's a controlled op. I mean, it is more difficult to discern this. The process becomes a little bit more complicated, I would say. But I mean, we have like Darren and I were talking about all the people that we've had on the show over the years and how many of them are getting talked about being put in to help the politicians. And I don't think politics is going to solve anything really. I mean, I hope it does, but I really don't have any faith that it will. I try not to be too black-pilled about it, but I mean, guys like, Matt Lohmeyer and I mean, even Jim Lee is being talked about like for weather modification. John Clark, we had him on recently. Joel Salatin, the farming guy. Peter Bregan on Big Farm. I mean, it's just weird to see people you've talked to on our little tiny podcast here that has been going for so many years, but actually get a chance to maybe make a difference, So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think the process is more difficult. It's more complicated, that's all. And it takes more time to weed through. Like, for example, let me use a great example here. Like, one of the ones that's annoyed me recently is how to get to the bottom of it. The wellness company. In Canada, there was a Canadian version, and I think Canada wouldn't allow it. It got shut down. It was too hard to operate in Canada. So I guess it might be just a U.S. company now. But it was a reaction to COVID and to all the bullshit, and it has like an emergency kit with like ivermectin and a bunch of antibiotics and all this kind of stuff. And they've been attacked quite a lot and I always thought it was a good thing. I was like, well, this is finally somebody's stepping up. There's an alternative here to our mainstream stuff. In Canada, we're really, really stuck to like what the colleges tell you to do. Like there is no flexibility at all. Like during COVID, we couldn't do anything except go to the emergency room for remdesivir and a ventilator. Like that was our only option, right? Or just sit at home and suffer through it. So, but I mean, it's being attacked and it's a psyop and this and that. And people like, I think this is what came up on when we were on the Union of the Unwanted too, right? And, you know, because there's a guy from one of that mercenary group, well, used to be X or whatever. And there's this other guy over here. And I'm just like, well, I want to see real evidence. Like, I want to see evidence that there's that there's some nefarious stuff. I don't want to just see these like connections of he worked with him 20 years ago. And,
right.
Like that's not enough for me right now. But to get to sort of to actually debunk that fear-based social media stuff, which was getting a lot of traction, I don't think I have the time to do that or the energy to actually go through and do that. So it's getting tougher to get to the bottom of some of this stuff because you're also fighting against the alt media, like you said, the ones that are fear-mongering about this stuff. Now what? I'm going to put my head out on the limb and go, hey, let's see some evidence here. I try not to be so controversial on social media either. And we don't really have a presence since Darren's been kicked off of Twitter. So anyways, what do you think about that?
I think it's complicated in all the ways that we've been talking about. But what concerns me more about the alt media is most people are not having the conversation you and I are having. It seems like it's kind of broken into two things. One is that, like we just said, first of all, the topics we talk about are so mainstream now. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. And we shouldn't push against it. And you can find people that have shows that are 10 times bigger than your show, 10 times bigger than my show, and are getting the message out. And I do think we have to be more upfront about addressing that and then about figuring out another way, because we can't keep circling into the same topics that are already being covered. In a lot of cases, I'll speak for myself, covered better than I cover them. So I listened to Danny Jones's interview with Dr. Jeffrey Long, the NDE guy. It was the best presentation by Jeffrey Long I've seen.
Wow.
Danny Jones, and I told Jeff that right after it. And he's done a bunch of other ones too. So Danny Jones, and he got 1 million views on it, or he got the high 100,000s. He got 10 times the reach I got, and better. So why do I want to, kind of push against that? And the way I see a lot of people pushing against that is to go way out there with some stuff that just is incredible. And I think we have to scrutinize, and we can't just broaden the net and say, okay, now we got to get, and I was on a show not too long ago about my book, and it was like the guest is like, yeah, but I need something new, I need something, and this is a pretty established guy, I'm trying to find stuff that everyone else isn't covering. That to me is a slippery slope, because you and I get emails all the time from people that no one else is covering, and there's a reason no one else is covering. It's because they're crackpots with crackpot theories, which has always been a part of this little subculture that we're in. It just so happens that, as you're alluding to, before in that subculture was all the golden nuggets, So that, I think that relates to me to part of the situation that you're talking about there with the guy, in vetting whether or not he really does have a little health kit that, is the COVID health kit kind of thing, which to me is almost a different kind of thing, because those are kind of business opportunistic business opportunities that I think you and I have always steered clear of. It's like, hey, man, whatever. You want to sell that to people. If people like it, who am I to say,
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we've talked about the wellness company a bit on the show. We don't do sponsors with anybody really. So I've never been brought into that kind of weird corporate shilling type thing. It's interesting because how much vetting do you do? Like a show like ours. So I wanted to ask you and your assistant too. I mean, you've had some problems with some of our topics. So I want to know, what topics are you talking about? And how much vetting do we do? Or do we just let it roll and then let the listeners figure it out later on, right? We've had some crazy topics that also haven't been proven out yet. They haven't been proven wrong yet.
Well, I mean, where my attention is focused right now, because of the potential of it, I am just amazed every day at what AI is able to do right now today. And I think there is this, I keep calling it the AI truth use case, because you can use AI for protein folding or for materials invention, which it is like extraordinarily accomplished at, much better than the best humans in the world already at. These are super important tasks. I mean, AI is generating patents in materials science that will make billions of dollars for the people who are doing that. That's like real. And yet people talk about AI as if it's some kind of future thing. It's kind of like when I talk to people that I know very closely in my family, and I say, hey, what about automated driving and, the whole thing? And they go, oh, yeah, someday. I go, no, I mean, I just saw a video. Did you see the new test release, version 13? It's better than version 12. Yeah, someday that might really be good. And I keep going, did you hear what I just said? You can go buy one of those today and then install it in your car. And I feel the same way about AI. People go, oh, yeah, but it hallucinated about this and that. I'm like, no, bro, you don't understand. Or the other thing I'll get in our little domain, I just had this discussion the other day. Yeah, but I have this secret special source about Bormann and the Nazis, and AI doesn't know about that. And what I always say is, I think AI does know about that, but let's test your theory. Tell me what you think it doesn't know, and let's ask AI. And invariably, AI knows about it. Or at the very least, you can load it into like Notebook LM or GPT, and now it knows about it, and it can connect it with all the other stuff. So, you see, if you get me wound up about AI, I can't stop.
Yeah, that's
the point as it relates to our discussion, I think you can vet every show that you have. You can vet in AI in 30 minutes, and you can find a good number of your shows that are probably a little bit suspicious.
Yeah.
I just, my buddy who, I won't mention his name, but I was getting on him because he had on the vegan Jesus guy, guy's making the rounds. No, and you chuckle, but this guy would be on your show, right? Because he has all the research, and he has all the ancient scriptures, and he's gone through the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he's picked out this and he's picked out that. And it's not easy to get the AI to debunk it, but you can get the AI to debunk it because the AI knows everything. So somebody like you who knows a ton about all these different topics, you are like dynamite with the AI if you put it to use, because you can call it out, when it starts going off rails. So anyways, I think I'm not only making a pitch for that. I think anyone who isn't in that space, isn't in that headspace, forget it. You will be steamrolled. You will be playing chess against a guy in the park, and you're not going to know, but he's going to be hooked up to AI, and he's going to take your $20 over and over again because you're playing the frickin' computer. And I think that's the thing with truth. If you think you know some topic and you're not deep into really, really, advanced prompt engineering and getting it out of AI, then you're just going to look like a clown because you're going to be doing these shows on stuff that just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And you're going to get the wild, and then you're going to look like a clown because it's not true.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I really do appreciate that. Darren's it's funny because 3 of my closest guy friends and from different things are all into AI. I mean, they're using it. I use it every day for pronunciations for my narration, but I don't use it in the way you are suggesting, and I will play around with it for sure. I mean, I'm just not paying for any, extra subscriptions in AI. But I mean, the guys that I'm closest to they're deep into it. I mean, my one buddy in Vancouver, he's got it, like he's got theories. It's like you would actually really appreciate what he's done. He's sort of connected biohacking with spirituality and ancient wisdom, and like he's come up with like a mathematical theory and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he's going deep on it. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I guess I would have to agree with you. But what are some of the topics? Like, what are some of the ones that are suspicious? Do you have any that stick out to you at all? Like, or not even like the guests specifically, but the topic, like flat Earth. I mean, I know you and your assistant mentioned flat Earth. I mean, and we did do a flat Earth show, but we got into a big kerfuffle, and I mean, we named our audiobook company after it because the guy called Darren out for not using his adult brain. So that's, but that's pretty rare. We don't usually get in kerfuffles with guests.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of topics, and I think it's like, and I'm going to talk to Darren in a few weeks about his tremendous work with, First Nation stuff, which I tell you, First Nation is a word that triggers me kind of like DEI does. Really, first. Absolutely, the first. That's amazing.
But they're not using that anymore. It's indigenous.
Oh, not using that anymore. The spirit of it is the same.
Yeah.
The spirit of it is the same. It's privileged. You're somehow privileged by your ancestry, and I think that's like a real and relevant topic to talk about because I don't dismiss it out of hand. I don't say that you don't have some privilege for that. And now we're getting into a discussion that I'm going to have with Darren too. So I'm not talking out of school, but it's like, I have Greek ancestry. Well, I'm only 50% Greek. But when I was brought up, man, I thought I was Greek. That's how I was brought up, as a Greek church, and we're Greek, and this is what we do. And then, there was a movie a long time ago, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And I found there's all these families that are like that, built around this idea that we're Greek and we had this ancient history and we should be so proud of it. And it's like, wait, what are we talking about here? What is this nonsense? And no, the Jews are the chosen people. No, the Muslims are the chosen people. The Mormons are the chosen people, really chosen people. It's all the same discussion, but are you going to have that discussion? Are you going to risk having that discussion? To me, you have to, because otherwise you're having a half a discussion about what's perpetrated on a particular group for a particular bunch of reasons. You're just having a half a discussion. You're not having the full discussion. So that's another place that I think you take that to AI. AI deconstructs that in a minute because it isn't worried about offending someone or someone's feelings or, all that stuff that I think is the next stage as well as we move forward.
But isn't it though? I mean, isn't it built to not offend? Or isn't it built to treat some people with the privilege that you just mentioned? I mean, how do we, I know you've already worked through all that, but to me, that seems daunting too, to be asking it too many of these deep questions when it's been programmed to not offend.
I don't want to turn this into a whole AI show.
No, I know. But
the short answer is very, very easy to work around that. And the other thing I always say is like, compared to what? Okay, so it's not perfect compared to what? Trump administration. It's not perfect compared to what? People who are openly satanic in a way that I don't even understand what satanic means because I'm not a Christian, but people who are openly kind of tapped into a dark, evil, like incredibly negative energy and want that to be promulgated through every aspect of our life. Well, the decision's kind of easy. I'll take option B,
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, and I will give you this. You made me think. I mean, we have, say right now, we've done a lot of half interviews, right? I mean, we don't go hard in the paint like you do on a lot of those. And maybe that's what we should be pushing back a little bit, deconstructing a little bit. I mean, that, I'll definitely give you that. We definitely don't push the guests, too hard, unless it's one of those special topics like flat Earth.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting topic,
Because we get the guests to talk about things that they normally wouldn't talk to because we do make it comfortable for them. There is a level of resonance there that sometimes I'm like, I'm going to push back on that. But then I'm like, wait a second, we're into the flow and he's going to tell us more, So how do you stop? You don't want to stop that telling of more by, clamping down on something. So that's how I think about it.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I don't agree with it at all, but I think it's wonderfully true, and to me, that's the other thing that gets me excited about the AI truth case is that AI will do that all day long because it's so easy to program that human engagement. We are so easily duped and buttered up and, just made to feel, that's so easy. But it's also so easy to step past that with AI and say, no, that's bullshit. Give me the truth. And then it goes ahead and gives you the truth. And I think that's what we need to do to our guests. We need to let AI butter them up, but then let's also tear them down and say, no, that just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny. It doesn't hold up to logical scrutiny. It doesn't hold up to the other person that I just talked to last week. So one of you is right and one of you is wrong.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
So, Grant, we talked about this kind of unbelievably expansive network of great content that's out there. And the one thing I'd push back a tiny bit is I think YouTube is so much more open now than a lot of people realize. And when I talk to kind of old timers like you and I, in the alt media thing, it's like, oh, it's shut down. Oh yeah, of course it's shut down, but it's also opened up and they don't even know what's opened and what's closed. So with a little bit of maneuvering, you can get all sorts of stuff on YouTube and it's worth trying to do that. So in this expanded realm of great alternative ideas, who do you kind of look at that's kind of made a mark that you think you like to follow and listen to?
As far as research goes, or platform,
platform, who, like I mentioned, Danny Jones.
Oh, okay.
I love Russell. I'm not a big fan of Tucker. Joe Rogan still, I love what he's done, what he's offered, what he's brought. But, and I love that he's now more, than he was before, but not really. How about you? Who are you?
Well, I try to be honest, I really need to. So we're doing 2 interview shows a week usually. And so most of the time I'm just listening to a little bit of each of those guests and what they've been doing, maybe an audiobook here and there. So I'm really not hitting the platforms like you are. I'm not hitting one specific platform. It's wherever I need to go to get the best information I have about an upcoming guest. And then if I was to just have free reign with full entertainment purposes only, it's still a varied type thing. I mean, I like some of the, I can't even, it's so sporadic that I can't even answer it,
Well, that's the other part that we're all living through. No one's listening to anyone else.
Right.
They're just putting out stuff.
Because it was Joe Rogan to hear this dude, and it was like Danny Jones to hear this other guy, and it was Patrick Bet David to hear some other stuff, and it's that's where I'm missing a couple big ones. I know I'm missing a couple that I listen to. No Agenda Show is like a staple if I want to sort of like a deconstruction of the media happening, right?
I was really surprised when what's his name came on and was so Christian. I mean, I don't know why I was surprised. That's Curry, right? What's his name?
Yeah, Adam Curry. Yeah,
Adam Curry.
But I do want to answer your question because I am gravitated towards magic, the occult, ancient wisdom. Really, like if I was to just read books, not for working, but for my own, which I try to really combine into one thing. But it'd be like Aeon Byte and Jason Louv. I like some of his episodes.
Oh my God.
His podcasts. Who's the other one? And like Rune Soup. Those are very topical too. I'll switch back and forth with some of those guys, depending
I didn't realize you really take that magic stuff as seriously as you do.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean to you?
It means that we have untapped potential and power that, from my conspiratorial point of view, they've hidden from us. They purposely hidden from us. They've known about it for thousands of years, and now it's like it's always got a different name. It could be New Thought or all these things nowadays, manifestation and all this, but it's all just, the ability to sort of manipulate reality to what you want.
Create better than the creator gods kind of guy, huh?
Yeah, I just find it absolutely fascinating. Because it's, I've had enough personal experiences that it's like, whew, okay, well, I don't really need to know, and I don't need to experiencing anything more, but I'd like to learn more about it. But I don't want to play around with it, I've come to the point where I've kind of put some boundaries around how I would approach those subjects, like maybe following some tarot and astrology and stuff is fine, but making contact with any being at all is like, now it's like even going out and looking for UFOs, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to that stuff is so real that I don't really want to have to discern whether, like, I'm not fully initiated to discern what's good and what's evil and what's wants the best for me and what doesn't, you know. So I stay in the little bit of a sandbox of, you know, maybe more, what would I say, like stars or heavenly type stuff, or like there's, you know, correspondences with astrology and stuff that it resonates with, like, you know, that's it seems to me like that's safer than actually like in contact with anything. So
Yeah, I don't know. That's
connected. The UFOs are all connected to it, right? I mean, the government figured all this stuff out in the 30s and the 20s, like a long time ago. They played around with this stuff. They know it's real. That's why they had to hide it all from us, right? They're like, we don't want the U.S., just thinking about U.S. and that sort of Western culture, we don't want them knowing anything that's real. Like, what they know about is all going to be false. I mean, that was the mind control that's been happening over decades and decades and decades. And I think that's partly because they know that the reality is so complicated and we have so much more power and control than we realize, that they have to keep the lid on it.
Well, I think that's one possible read of a lot of good data that you're kind of bringing forward, and you've kind of done the work. But I don't think that's the only interpretation, you know. And it's like, I think the Christian thing is kind of interesting because I think, like, we're just chatting now. I don't know who's going to follow this conversation or if anyone's going to follow this conversation. But like, that's one of my kind of hot button issues, because if you go look at the near-death experience science, and I would have to say that's what kind of always is my pullback on the magic stuff, is that if you want to nudge closer towards something that we might call scientific, the best place I think to start is the extended consciousness stuff, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, you know, that kind of stuff. In the near-death experience, we just have all this science, you know, people have a cardiac arrest. We measure their blood. There's nothing in there, and there's no DMT. There's none of the rest of that. We know that the brain can't be functioning. Okay, so we're already into your realm now. We're into, there's something more. And then I think we have to look at, you know, it gets into the phenomenology, which is like, how do we deal with these experiences? And that's where I think we have a pretty solid base. No, I don't want to say solid. It's not solid, but we have a base of data of all these people coming in from the same entry point, you know, because when you start saying, that was always my thing about, you know, Aeon Byte and Bruin Soup and the rest of that. It's like, really? So this guy told you that he had to sharpen the knife in a particular way and draw the pentagram this precise way in order. Yeah, run that past me again. How does that really work? And how do we really know that? And how do we test that to some degree versus, you know, the body of evidence that we have in near-death experiences? We say, person was in the cardiac arrest ward. They were admitted under these conditions. They were resuscitated. Here's the record of how long they were gone. You know, we at least have some data points that we can kind of look at, and then we can look at their story, if you will. So that's my problem with the all the magic stuff. Is it just a lot of scoundrels and people that don't seem to have very good intent. And they also seem to be a lot of liars in there. I mean, the whole satanic thing, the Satanists, and I've had them on my show. I mean, the first thing is I can lie, right? Because it doesn't matter. There's no, whatever I do is okay. Do what thou wilt, you know, kind of thing. And I just can't, it seems to be so different than this other wisdom tradition that's been passed and it's spread across, and it's about love and it's about truth and it's about all that stuff is just kind of fades away. You know, yeah, you can go play your magic games all you want. It's like my question is, does ET have an NDE? You know, because if ET has an NTE, then that's at a different realm. But here I am. I've stolen the mic and my
no. I love it. I love it. No, I really like it. I mean, I don't care how it works. Like, I don't care about the data about it. Like, you know, whether you draw that pentagram clockwise or counterclockwise, like I'm not going to draw it. You know, I'm not going to do that. Because
No, I'm not going to do
I,
it. I'm not going to do it either. But
it,
why aren't you going to do it?
because I can't, because I don't want to open something up that I can't control or can't stop. I mean, I've had an experience where I if I open my mouth about something specific, it'll happen to somebody else. So like how do I, you know, how do you approach that, right? When I literally it's happened multiple times where when I talk about something, it happens to somebody else.
You know, one of the most interesting interviews I had this year, and I've had on the show for years and years, fantastic guy, is Dr. Andrew Paquette. Have you ever had him on Grimerica?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you got to get Andy. I always call him Andy. You have to have Andrew on your show. So Andrew was a big part of this last election cycle because he found all these hidden algorithms in the election rolls in terms of how they rig the elections. And he is like a math genius, so they're algorithmic. You can't deny it. He just, okay, well, if you sort it this way and this way, you get all these records that are purged. The chance of that happening accidentally is like 1 in a quadrillion. It just can't happen. It's algorithmic. It's mathematical. But before that, what Andrew did was, and he still does, he does precognitive dreams, Graham. So he dreams stuff before it happens, and he's recorded 8,000 of them, and he's published them, and he's done them in peer-reviewed. So last year, he sends me a dream that he's had about me, and he says, "I see you in this car, and you're like programming like crazy the dashboard, you know, and stuff like that." And then I'm leaving out a lot of part of the dream. Keep it short. And then he says, "I see your wife," and she's like all frustrated and she's pulling her hair out. Well, my wife bought a new BMW, and it's the first car, you know, BMW trying to make things so freaking complicated. It's just poor engineering. It's just, I'm very into computer programming. It's just poorly done. It's incredibly complicated. This is the first time in my life. Yeah, the first time in my life. And it wasn't set up. It was the thing had been running. It was just frustrating for me because it would automatically lock the doors for safety, you know, and I don't want you to automatically lock the doors. If I unlock them, leave them unlocked. That's how I want it, you know. So I finally got so frustrated, and not frustrated, but I was like, stupid. I don't want there. You know, it's like you and I would relate to in terms of all this other woke. It's a woke car, you know. It's like constantly trying to, you know. So I'm in there, I'm like going to town. I'm going to sit down and fully program, and I have my phone, and I'm looking up, you know, how to do. Never in my life have I ever done this with any car. Andrew, before I do it, has a dream 3 days before it happens and says this is going to happen. And then I come home and I tell my wife, I go, you know, God, he had this dream. I mean, it's paradigm shattering, you know. It's like he's dreaming about the future, and you were in the dream, hon. You know, it's like this. She goes, "Oh my God, I was at the gym. I came out of the gym. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't, you know, I like listening to my true crime, and I couldn't get anything to work, and it was so frustrating, you know, driving home." It's again right out of Andrew's dream. So the part for that, I've talked to him for so long, so many years, it wasn't quite as paradigm shattering, but it was still freaking paradigm shattering in terms of, you want to talk about magic. You want to talk about what comes out of your mouth then happens. Well, here's another paradigm. This guy is dreaming stuff that is going to happen. I mean, you talk about ending, you know, the post-materialism, you know, this is way past. Yeah, there is no causality in the universe, apparently.
That's one of the fascinating things that I've been saying about this type of thing is how is the phenomena going to react to this accelerated disclosure, right? Whatever that phenomena is. I mean, there's an egregore that's happening to us in humanity, us believing these things and these phenomena happening to us. So it's going to be interesting to see how this accelerated awareness affects the phenomenon itself. But But I almost had something in the back of my head there that I wanted to respond to on your when you're talking about the, the magic versus the NDEs. And I mean, I guess I would say it's related for sure. It's part of it. I mean, it happens, whatever happens in that realm, I think, in a way. But there's a big difference, and I appreciate what you're saying, because I'm fine with all that stuff, right? All the playing around in those realms. I mean, I think there is a bit of a crossover. Like, I think you probably want to be careful about like when you go into that realm, you might be a bright light that's attracting stuff. That's one of the things I've heard. So I do think there's a crossover, but I appreciate what you're saying about the NDEs and the OBEs, let's say, and the lucid dreaming even, and all that stuff is I would say is part of that sort of, the thing that would interest me, that magical thing that interests me. But it's so hard. I've tried to do some of that stuff, and it's so hard that I feel like it's more of an inherent thing. Like, if people are good at it, then good. They can practice it a lot easier than I can. So that's not something that I have any real power over, or control over myself.
Do you want to have power and control over it?
I did, but I don't know if I want to anymore. I mean, I'm such a sucker for just simplicity right now. Like, putting my feet on the grass, listening to the birds, just being present at home. Like, I'm working on a little studio right here. Not a studio, just an office downstairs, like renovating an old house. Like, it's just, I don't know. I'm sort of I feel like I'm turning into an old man. I'm just, my interests are more sort of simple now. I appreciate these little things a little bit more than I ever used to.
And you mentioned no more summoning ET.
Yeah, I've seen enough. I know there's something out there. I don't know if it's ET. That's what we were looking for. That's what was happening. I mean, we'd go out with the protocols, with love in our heart and all that Stephen Greer, CE5 stuff, and we'd see stuff, think something was communicating with us. I mean, we're asking for ET. We're out there remote viewing that. Is that what happened? I don't know. But it doesn't, to me, like, I'm a bit frustrated with the whole thing too. Like, what, you're going to make this sort of like weird, ambiguous contact with us. You're going to allow it, but you're not really going to fix the problem, right? The problem is that there's some bad ones that are sort of controlling things a little better. That's what it seems to me. So why don't you forget your principle of, your non-intervention principle, and help us fix some stuff. Like, when are enough of us going to believe that you'll come and help? So part of it is like, a part of me was like I've had enough of, like, okay, I've seen everything I need to see. Something's out there. I don't know what it is. I'm never really going to know what it is. I'm comfortable with that. So I'm just going to stop playing around with it, just in case.
So as we move towards wrapping this up, let me do a little bit of a deep dive into that, because I'm fascinated. So we kind of got some of the people you listen to, but we kind of decided that you're a victim to the same situation we all are, is there isn't enough time. Although I listen to a ton of stuff. I just am constantly listening to a ton of stuff, and I'm not putting out as much content as you are. So maybe I have an excuse, a way to do it. What do you think? You give them the general overview. I mean, we have to start nailing it down to the people, right? Stephen Greer, what do you think? A kind of thumbs up, thumbs down?
Oh man, this is you're really putting me on the spot here. Well, I've always had a soft spot for him, because I joined CSETI and MUFON in 94, 95, right? I mean, I was into it back then. We were going out in Vancouver with groups looking for stuff. And I knew the guy that was with Stephen Greer all the time. The guy that was running our group was friends with Stephen Greer. And he was talking about disclosure back then. I mean, he was putting that whole disclosure thing together back then. And he did it in 2001. He pulled it off. So I have a bit of a soft spot, because he said he was going to do all that. He did all that in 2001. 9/11 happened. Whatever the case is, people get mad at him because he charges so much for his for his outings and all that. I mean, I could care less how much the guy charges. If people want to pay that, and he's put his whole life into this thing, then people can pay it. But I'm not too sure I like how dogmatic it is about everything being good. All the ETs are good and all that stuff. It seems a little bit like, I don't know, spiritual bypass or red rose-colored glasses or something. Like, I just there's too much going on in the world to believe that it's all just, ETs are all just love and light. So That would be my 2 cents.
Okay, let's push that a
But
little
the
bit further.
protocols work. So if people are skeptical, go out there and try it yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, enough commentary on me. Doty, I think, is really interesting character, right? So Doty is on the stage with Stephen Greer. I still can't get over that in the same way that I can't get over Trump putting the medal on Fauci as he's leaving, somewhere along the line, if you're saying, oh, well, he just, the big job, can't do it all, I don't know. At some point, is Trump read into something about the vaccines that maybe he shouldn't have gone? But that's a sidetrack. My point is getting back to Richard Doty is on stage, right? So tell people a little bit about how you process that, and along the way you'll have to say who Richard Doty is, and then of course that is that Lou Elizondo? Is Lou Elizondo Richard Doty 2.0? What about Grush? We all like Grush. He's a little bit on the autistic scale, and he seems really genuine. Is he 3.0? What about?
I don't know, because I don't think any of them are as deep as Doty was back then when he was like tracking and communicating with that experiencer who ended up committing suicide, right? I mean,
Paul Benowitz.
Paul Benowitz. So I mean, that's
what do you mean he wasn't as? What do you mean he wasn't as deep?
No, the guys nowadays aren't as deep. Like they're not specific. They're on the surface level of the public disclosure.
How would we know?
Drip,
How would we know? I mean, Lou Elizondo.
Because if this happened back then, Doty wouldn't be one of the on stage. One of the front facing people. That's my opinion. Is he would have been underground a little bit, right? Or under.
But Lou Elizondo's out there. Elizondo's.
That's what I mean. Like that's why he wouldn't be specifically doing Doty type stuff. I don't think.
But the real question is why the heck is Greer? Why does he have Doty on stage? I mean, this is, again, I don't want to be like a crusader absolutist because the world is gray and I don't know how we get things done and all the rest of that. Well, but don't you have to kind of draw the line and say, here is a guy, and Richard Doty is the worst of the worst in terms of intelligence.
Accepted, right? Everybody's accepted it.
Well, he's acknowledged it. And you know what? Even that acknowledgement is so, like, this relates, we're going to bring it full circle. This relates back to the first part of our show and what old timers like you and I have to offer. And that's that, kids, you need to go look at, really dig into who Richard Doty was, because Richard Doty is a lie wrapped in a lie wrapped in a lie. When Richard Doty comes out about Paul Benowitz, he says, oh, I had to tell Paul Benowitz, who is this guy who's a UFO hunter and has this pretty advanced system set up on his New Mexico clear 30-degree light, where he's looking into the stars and he's seeing UFOs and he's recording them with his, equipment that he's put together. And he's just a contractor, like an electrician or something like that kind of guy, professional guy, owns his own thing. And this is New Mexico, right? So they build the Air Force Base right next to the housing complex, where this guy has a nice house, whatever. So he turns the camera over and he sees UFOs on the base in Kirkland. And he calls up and says, hey, man, you guys got UFOs over there. And then I'm cutting the story short. And Doty comes out and, does kind of MK Ultra him and stuff. They move the furniture around and say, oh, what do you mean? Are you crazy? What do you mean? We move the furniture around. Does all this shit that's like really, really dark, right? But what does Doty say? He says, it's not about UFOs. What I was protecting was the stealth. We had the stealthy kind of stuff out there. That was the narrative until the UFO thing is quote unquote disclosed. And it's like, now we're all like, well, of course you were hiding the UFO secret. Well, this is, again, a lie wrapped in a lie. And he even lies about when he visited him and when Benowitz came to him and all the rest of this. But what unravels is this very carefully orchestrated, complete, not just disinformation campaign, really mind control kind of game. And I'm just saying, when we look at somebody like Stephen Greer, and then the point I was making is Stephen Greer in one of his films has Richard Doty on stage. And I'm not the only one who called him out on this. A bunch of people called him out on this. And then he said, well, kind of like you got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer kind of thing. And, let's take information from anyone, we'd get it. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That's like the magic bullshit. It's like, no, it's like there's good and there's not good. There's do what thou wilt and create better than the creator gods. And it's love and forgiveness. And we're all one. We're all drops of water in the ocean. We're not separate. We're not here to create better than the creator gods. I mean, to me, it's just much more black and white. And you can't put Richard Doty on your stage. You just can't do it and claim to be all the things that Stephen Greer is claiming. So there was a long rant, but here's how it relates back to the beginning. You understand every bit of that rant. You understand every detail of it. And people who are new to the game, they're going to have to do a little bit of work to get there. So one, add anything that I've left out, because you know this much more than I do. And then how you're processing my net is that you can't put that guy on the stage. You can't embrace the darkness by saying, well, it's all gray.
Oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't there be an argument for, the utmost compassion and Greer's spiritual discernment and all that, and allowing him, I don't know if it's another chance or just allowing it based on, compassion and all the love and light bullshit. I don't know, but I just don't see the parallel between the new modern day Lou Elizondo types and Doty, because Doty, I think they learned a lot from Doty and what happened. I don't know if they wanted it to get out of control like it did, but that I'm sure they learned from that. I don't think type of stuff happens at that public level now with Elizondo and these guys. I don't know. It's just. Do you think
Lou Elizondo is legit, or is he not?
No, I don't think any of them are legit. I just don't have I have a problem trusting any of them, to be honest. Even Grush and those guys. I just want, let's forget beating around the bush. Give us some of the goods. We can handle it now. But I think the answers are so complicated and so complex that maybe we can't handle it.
Okay, but this will maybe bring things full circle to people who can't or aren't interested in following. What is your methodology that allows you to so quickly and confidently say Lou Elizondo, no, and Grush,
because he works for the government?
Well, but it's more than that, right?
I know, but my initial thing is I just don't trust anything government tells us right now, including Trump's government. I mean, I'm hopeful, but I just don't, I just don't trust them at all.
See, that's very shorthand. The longer hand I would put, and to get your reaction, is that because there are no whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are suicided. That's what happens to whistleblowers or Julian Assange. Or Julian Assange. I don't know if you heard his speech when he came back, but he revealed a great point. He goes, look, it's been terrible for me. It was, they all were out to get me. But Trump administration was the worst. And Pompeo actually put a hit out, literally put a hit out on Julian Assange. This is his claim. I have no reason to think Assange is making it up at this point, and his whole presentation is extremely compelling. Well, I don't know I never hear any of the Trumpsters talk about that. And again, I'm pro-Trump for the reason that we said, because the other ones are so freaking satanic. It's just beyond belief. But there is a level of truth to what you're saying of just don't trust the government, but that's not really good enough. I mean, right? We have to be more discerning than that. But that's kind of the evidence of, no, it's not. No, Lou Elizondo, no. If you were a whistleblower, they wouldn't allow you to speak. They just wouldn't. There's no history of that. Point me to anyone who's ever turned out to be a legitimate whistleblower who is allowed to speak truth in that way. Just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and look at his title alone just says it all, right? Isn't he some counter ops type guy or whatever? I mean, why? So what, we're supposed to believe the guy that has the name of his title or the meaning of his title means that we shouldn't trust him? I mean,
did you ever look into the two resignation letters?
No, I don't think so.
I resign. No, I really resign. They had to redo the first one and redate it so that it,
But I think that it's a mix of the private. There's a private part of this. There's a private industry part of this. Like sort of a separate. I mean, really, it does go deep with, how the free energy is a part of it. They can't bring out the disclosure of the energy, which Greer's been on top of forever too, which I appreciate about him too, is he's always talked about the energy aspect of it. And that is a big aspect of it. And that's coming out too. I mean, that's another thing that we didn't even talk about. I mean, there's the whole plasmoid and free energy stuff, the interdimensional portals. I mean, this stuff is all coming out too. And Lockheed's kind of in the midst of it all. And I think it's all connected, they just have to be careful about this disclosure. So they can't let it out until they have their handle on who's going to make billions on it, I think,
Maybe.
Or maybe they just don't want it out, because then that just opens up a whole other can of worms, because who knows how that technology is going to be controlled. But I think that's a huge part of it is they've got technology that they now have to say that they've been using for decades and decades, and we've been visited. I mean, I think it's an all of the above. I'm on this type of phenomenon. I'm all of the above. It's angels, demons, ET, it's black ops, it's all of it. There's enough room for all of it to be happening.
I agree. And, among the things in there that's my pet peeve is when we talk about ET, or when we talk about grays, or we talk about this, or we talk about that. I mean, in what conception of that do you think there aren't kind of a lot of species, a lot of visitors, a lot of different times of visiting? I mean, in what way have you boiled that down to the Boolean of visitor, yes, kind of thing, which is the other thing that's very suspicious about how it's so nicely packaged from Lou and his New York Times bestseller, and Danny Sheridan, who I love to death, but I can't believe he's his, front man now, out there doing that stuff and not looking, and a Jesuit nonetheless. I mean, it's just like, it's a great world though, isn't it? There's did you see him
in the family picture with RFK Jr. and the whole big family Thanksgiving picture?
Who, Danny?
Yeah. I didn't know he was either closely related or he's in so tight that he was in the family Thanksgiving picture. Like, it's really interesting.
I don't have anything. He is just it's really interesting. And, maybe this is where we're heading with this show too, is that this is the place, this is the discussion that has to happen. And I guess it is happening. It's happening more than it ever has, by more people than it ever has.
I mean, to the point where I can't keep up on it. I mean, I don't know about you, but the UFO thing, I just I can't keep up on it. It becomes, so that's another issue that we kind of addressed, but to keep up on that as part of the Grimerica show at a deep level, it's like a full-time job. It would be a full-time job. I mean, I can't do it. So that's the other challenge that we're facing, right? Whether it's that or the wellness company stuff. Like, I mean, maybe AI would help in that regard, because it could probably tease apart a lot of that stuff. But I have a hard time keeping up. The UFO X community is more massive than I could have imagined in 2017 or 2020. It's unbelievable how many new UFO people are here researching it, and considering we've been, pushing this for 13 years. I mean, personally, like a lot longer than that, but since we've been podcasting 11, 12 years, it's fascinating to see. It's awesome to see.
It is awesome to see. And, behind that is an explosion of exponential levels of real data, right? So we have all this real stuff that's come out that we wouldn't have had before.
The orbs, like even just the stuff that's happening recently, like the UK things, like I just don't see things getting debunked as easily nowadays too, with all the stuff on X. And there's not a lot of people saying, "Oh, that wasn't an orb on the tarmac of the UK airport," right? They're like, "That was an orb." Yeah. We don't know what it was made of and how it was flying and who flown it, but it was there.
Exactly. So where does this leave us in this conversation in terms of Grimerica, and what is the future of this little nook in the media space that we've enjoyed being in so much? I mean, I guess you answered that at the beginning, and you had a great answer about how you see yourself going forward. Is there anything else you'd add to that?
Well, we've been focusing a lot on publishing audiobooks as well, so that's taken up a lot of our time and resources. And I think Darren and I think Darren might be able to talk to you about this in more detail. But I think he's like in our little documentary, he kind of mentioned the podcast being a labor of love. So, I think we're probably just content to have it sustain itself where it is right now, where if we can just get supporters that keep up to our attrition rate of PayPal, like dropping people off and people just leaving the support, if we can keep up the little bit of support we have to pay the bills and a tiny bit of extra money, then that's probably where we're at. And we're going to work on other things as well, like audiobooks and trips and stuff like that. So I don't think we're going to be, any massive plans for expansion or anything like that. Just trying to stick in our lane in a way, even though our lane is changing, to stay in there and do our own work with our other show, Grimerica Outlaw, do the roundups, and that's a more controversial show, and we sort of keep the other show a little bit. This show, the original Grimerica show, a little bit lighter. We're up to like almost 700 episodes there, so we're just we're kind of trying to maintain that brand as what it's always been, and we're hitting the other sort of darker, deeper stuff in Grimerica Outlawed. So I think that would be a synopsis of our plan.
It's a good one. Well, great. I'm glad we did this. It was super connecting with you, and you have such a great perspective on everything.
Yeah, we really appreciate your support over the years. How awesome you've been, and you've been leading the way, man. It's awesome to see where we're at now in 2024. It really is.
Well, you take care, and we'll be in touch, right?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Thanks.